The wind that morning blew dust across the small frontier town of Dry Creek, carrying with it the faint echoes of cattle, wagon wheels, and the whispers of townsfolk gathering near the wooden platform in the square. They came to see another sale, one that turned even the hardest cowhands silent. A young woman stood bound by circumstance more than rope, her pale blue dress faded from years of wear, her hair tangled from the long journey that had brought her here. Her name was Clara Mayfield, once the daughter of a respected ranching family until fate and cruelty branded her something no woman should ever be called. Useless. Her parents, desperate for money and pride, had spread a cruel lie about her being unable to bear children, and in the harsh lands of the West, that was enough to strip a woman of her worth. As the auctioneer's voice cut through the hot noon air, calling out bids with careless authority, Clara's eyes searched the crowd not for a savior, but for a sign of mercy. Men whispered, some laughed, others spat tobacco into the dirt, but among them stood one man who didn't join in the mockery at all. Quiet rancher named Elijah Hart, his weathered face told the story of long days under sun and nights under stars. A man whose soul had known loss yet refused to turn bitter. He had come into town only for supplies, not salvation, but when his gaze met Clara's, something within him stirred, something protective, something true. The bidding began low, cruelly so, as if her dignity was being whittled away coin by coin. $10, one man jeered. She ain't worth the dust she stands on, another shouted, but Elijah's voice rose steady and calm above them all. $100, he said, tipping his hat slightly, his tone leaving no room for laughter. The crowd hushed, stunned at his boldness. The auctioneer blinked, his mouth hanging open before slamming the gavel down. Sold to Mr. Hart, he declared. A murmur spread like wildfire, and Clara's heart pounded as the man who had just bought her approached. But instead of yanking her down or dragging her off like so many others had done before, Elijah removed his coat and placed it gently around her shoulders. You're safe now, he said softly, his voice carrying warmth that felt foreign in a world that had only given her cold. The ride back to his ranch was quiet, broken only by the rhythmic clop of hooves and the sigh of the prairie wind. Clara sat rigid, unsure if she had escaped one prison only to find another. Yet Elijah kept his distance, speaking only when needed, treating her not as property, but as a person long forgotten by kindness. When they reached his homestead, a modest spread framed by golden fields and the scent of pine, he helped her down from the wagon and said simply, "You'll have your own room. No one here answers to anyone they don't want to." That night, Clara stood by the window of the small cabin he'd given her, staring at the stars that spilled across the sky like spilled diamonds. For the first time in years, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever, a flicker of hope. But as the coyotes howled in the distance, she wondered if a man as good as Elijah could truly see hers more than what the world said she was. And though she didn't yet know it, that night would mark the beginning of a love story that would defy every cruel word ever spoken about her, and every false truth that tried to define her. Days turned into weeks, and weeks stretched into months beneath the endless sky of the frontier. Clara Mayfield, once a woman broken by betrayal, found herself slowly piecing her soul together within the quiet rhythm of Elijah Hart's ranch. Each dawn greeted her not with the sound of chains or shouted orders, but with the soft neighing of horses and the smell of fresh coffee drifting from the kitchen. Elijah never treated her as property, nor even as a guest, but as someone equal, someone whose worth was never in question. He taught her how to ride the ranch trails, how to mend fences, how to speak to horses like they were kin. And though he spoke little, his eyes said everything, a gentleness forged by pain, a kindness shaped by loss. Clara, in turn, learned to smile again, though faintly at first, like a flower testing sunlight after too long in the dark. Yet the ghosts of her past weren't easy to silence. One evening, while the sun melted gold over the horizon, a wagon approached from the east. Clara froze at the sight of the men who stepped down. It was her father and brother, the same men who had sold her without hesitation. They came not with remorse, but with arrogance. "We've come to take back what's ours," her brother sneered. "She belongs to us." Elijah stepped forward, calm but resolute. "She belongs to no one," he said, voice steady as the ground beneath his boots. Her father scoffed. "You think you can keep her? She's useless to any man." The words struck like bullets, reopening every wound Clara thought had healed. Before Elijah could reply, Clara stepped forward herself, trembling but fierce. "No," she said, her voice quivering but strong. "I'm not useless. I work hard. I think, I feel, and I've found a life here that you could never understand." For a long, heavy moment, the only sound was the prairie wind. Her father's glare faltered, and her brother muttered curses before they climbed back into the wagon, riding off into the dying light. Clara sank to her knees, tears spilling freely, not from pain this time, but from release. Elijah knelt beside her, gently lifting her chin until their eyes met. "You never needed them to tell you what you were," he whispered. "You were already whole." That night, beneath a sky so full of stars it seemed heaven itself was watching, they sat by the fire in quiet companionship. Clara felt warmth bloom in her chest that no lie could ever take away. Over time, the ranch became not just a place of work, but a home built on mutual respect and quiet affection. Elijah and Clara shared laughter, long rides, and moments of silence that spoke louder than words. The town that once pitied her now saw a woman transformed, a survivor who had risen from shame to grace. One spring morning, the preacher rode out from town, and under the same open sky where she'd once been sold, Clara stood beside Elijah as his wife. The townsfolk gathered, not to gawk but to celebrate, for even in a land so harsh and unforgiving, love had bloomed like wildflowers after rain. As the ceremony ended, Elijah took her hand and whispered, "You were never broken, Clara. You just needed someone to remind you you're already whole." And as the music of fiddles drifted across the plains, she smiled a smile full of peace, strength, and new beginnings. In the years to come, folks would say that Elijah Hart had rescued a lost woman, but those who truly knew them would tell it different. She had saved him, too. Their love became legend, proof that even in the roughest corners of the Old West, redemption could grow from dust and despair. So if you believe that kindness still has a place in a hard world, if you believe that love can heal what life has broken, then saddle up and join our next story. Because out here on the frontier, every heart has a tale to tell. Don't forget to subscribe to Old West Stories for more powerful tales of courage, love, and second chances beneath the western sun.